Paperwork is the trickiest part of our job because it is the most boring, but it's the stuff that we have to get right. And if we don't get it right, then we aren't doing a good job. In today's podcast episode, I get to chat with two TVIs who have really made it their mission to make the very best PLAAFPs, your present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. And they're going to be coming in and sharing why this even matters and how they've used it to help them become better teachers. If you're interested at all, you definitely want to stay tuned and see a little bit about the people behind why we have to really focus on this and how can we get better at it, especially because we really just want to get back to, teaching. They're going to be presenting at the International Orientation and Mobility Online Symposium. If you're interested in that, click the link below. We will love to have you here in January 2025. But if you miss it, don't worry. You can join the priority list for next year. Either way, come take a listen to this incredible episode and interview with Rebekka and Shannah. Oh my gosh, welcome to the podcast, you guys. I'm so glad that you are here. The topic that you're talking about at the symposium, I think, is so needed. But I really want to hear about the story behind all of how you came up with the strategies that you use, but really how you as a professional came to be who you are as a professional. But first and foremost, we got to have you introduce yourselves. Would you please introduce yourselves to our community?
My name is Shannah Blankenship. I am an orientation mobility specialist and a teacher of students with visual impairments. I am the state lead for the sensory for the special education specialized support network in Texas. So I don't deal directly with students very often anymore unless we're doing an expanded core event. I typically do training for people across the state in Region 11.
And my name is Rebekka Berry, and I am a teacher of students with visual impairments for West Wichita Co-op out of Wichita Falls, Texas as well. And Shannah and I have been friends for like 30 years, and prior to being in the field together. So then just being in the field together, we started working, and that's kind of how we got together. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Wait, who joined the field first then?
Shannah did, and she recruited me.
Yeah, I actually tried to recruit her when I still lived in Wichita Falls, and she wasn't quite ready because I have 5 kids and she has 4. And so, when you do Braille, it's the timing kind of has to be right for you in your personal life. And so she eventually came on board, and then we started presenting based on different issues or that we came across together while we were teaching. And so a lot of the time it's Rebekka that comes in and says, hey, I'm struggling with this. Let's present and come up with a plan on how we can help other people with this problem.
Nice. And Shannah, earlier you had said Region 11. So just so you guys know, if you're watching or listening to this, in Texas, we have our individual school districts, but they're a little bit smaller. And over that, there are 20 regions that basically provide support to our teachers in different clusters of school district. But anyway, so as you guys were stepping into this field, you mentioned how many kids you had. You already had kids, I take it, before you came in. Tell me how that was managing a household and children, and did you have to go back to school? Like, what was that like?
So I ended up, first I was a TVI, and I spent a summer doing Braille class because at Stephen F. Austin, the way it's set up is as a cohort. And so you do Braille for the summer, and then you finish your coursework and teach if you can find a job for the rest of the year. So at least I was already a teacher, and it was pretty easy to do that. Now, when I became a comms, I'm trying to think. I think my 4 oldest were probably all out of the house, and my youngest one, I would drop him off in Wichita Falls and head to Lubbock for the week because I spent 5 weeks on campus in Lubbock living in a dorm with other adults while we were doing our summer program piece. So you do direct instruction in Lubbock for those 5 weeks. And, basically my parents and my husband, it takes a village to manage 5 kids anyway. And luckily my mom and dad were retired at the time. So they were able to help me with my son. I think he had more fun being with them than he would have at home anyway.
For me, that's why she was unsuccessful at recruiting me the first time, because my kids were all still young, and I was like, I'm not ready for that. So I want to say it was probably 10 years later that I finally said, okay, Shannah, I'm ready to do what you were talking about. And then my kids were older at the time, they were all in school. And so then I was able to manage that a little bit easier.
Nice. I just spoke with Mimi Garcia and Kennelly, who are going to be presenting some bonus presentations. And they both also came into this career as a second career. And Mimi had children already, and she went back to school, and she lives on a farm. And Kennelly had been a nurse for 35 years. And I just find it so empowering that you guys had so much going on. I mean, I could not have 4 children. God bless both of you. 4 or 5, like, no, thank you. That just sounds like madhouse to me. But you managed not only to keep their little nervous systems in check and like their grades up, or help them with whatever, maybe young adult things that they were going through, because you still need your mom. Like, I even called my mom the other day. I was like, Mom, I'm sick and I actually want to get over it quickly. So like, what do I do? And she had to like walk me through medicine, because I don't typically take medicine. I'm 40 and I'm still calling my mom. So it's not like, so even though your kids were older, you had nothing going on. You were still managing a house and doing all of this, and like having to, manage your marriage and all of that. What was it about becoming a TVI or comms that made you really want to take on that extra work? Because it's not like as though you had nothing going on prior.
For me, my first year of teaching, I had a student in my class that just tugged at my heartstrings. And he was not identified as special education, but should have been. And so that really sparked that passion for me in wanting to help kids, specifically like the one that I had in my classroom. And so that's when I went back to Shannah and said, hey, I think I want to do this. Like, this is something that I feel pretty strong about. And so I started down that road at that point. So it was personal experience with that one student.
So for me, I had a student that was visually impaired in my behavior classroom. And I grew up with a friend that had a visual impairment, but I didn't realize he had a comms or a TVI. And I asked the TVI, I was like, how do I do this? This is something that I would really be interested in, because I drove my buddy everywhere. We went to a concert in Oklahoma when we were in high school. We had a lot of adventures together, and I had no clue that he had the type of support system that he did. And I was really struggling. I was in a behavior classroom and had been there for about 5 years and needed a change. And so Tammy, a friend of the TVI, who's now a friend of mine, was like, oh yeah, you can just go back to school. You have to learn Braille, but that's okay. And then whenever I moved into the comms position, I started in Wichita Falls, and my husband took a job in the Metroplex just outside of Fort Worth. And when I got here, there's in Region 9, there's one orientation mobility specialist. But once I got to the Metroplex, there's more, and everyone had a different philosophy. And I kind of was like, well, why does this person do this with these kids, but this person doesn't have anything to do with these kinds of kids? And I wanted to know why different people had different perspectives, because I think in the bigger district that I worked in, I worked with 2 or 3 different comms. And so I just really wanted to know why they did things differently, and then how I could kind of support that. And that's where that piece of it came along for me.
That's incredible. So for each of you guys, I'd love to hear, early in your career, was there like a student that made you just say, yes, I'm so glad I did this?
I would have to say the one that I have right now is the one for me. I worked for a couple of years in a different district, and I mainly worked with MIVI kids. And then when I came to this district, I actually am working with a student that is completely blind. And so I've got to do the Braille side of things and the functional side of things. And I just almost immediately, I'm like, this is why I'm here. This is what I want to do. So, and every day he amazes me.
Oh, isn't that so sweet?
Yeah, it is. It makes what I do enjoyable, and I'm motivated, and I can't wait to get back to him.
That's just so beautiful. We hear so much about teachers complaining online about how hard teaching is, or all of the negative aspects of teaching. And yes, teaching has negative aspects. So does every job. Like, I couldn't be in corporate right now, or I have a friend who's a steel fabricator and I'm looking outside and it's 30 degrees and raining. Nope, don't want to do that. Like, I could walk silently, going outside in this weather, but I don't want to have to like go to a factory or anything like that. There's a lot of jobs that I don't want to do, no matter how much they pay. And I find that when we get to talk with the teachers who love it so much and you're motivated because the student is learning and they're giving so much back to you, it's kind of like, yes, like these are my people, people who love teaching and who are motivated to keep getting better and doing better for their learners.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
I love that. Shannah, I want to hear about yours too.
So for me, again, that buddy of mine that I grew up with, he was a Braille reader. He was in our AP classes with us, and he really, his mom expected everything out of him that she expected out of his older brother. And so for me, I always want to make sure that our kids are pushed. And, it's not, I don't know that it's just one kid. I mean, I know Rebekka and I had the same kid years apart. And he happened to be a behavior kid that was in my class that was visually impaired too. And, a lot of people didn't realize the potential that he had because he would easily shut down and, he didn't have a great home base. And so he was one of those kids that I was like, this kid has so much more potential than someone realizes, because you had to build that rapport and that relationship. And I think for us, relationships are always important, but I feel like with our students, it's that much more important because we're with the kids and see them in a different perspective. And like, sometimes I feel like the teachers and other people tend to enable where we can be like, hey, no, I know that you can do better or do more than what you're showing someone. And so to just empower the student, and that's probably one of the hardest pieces of my job now, is because I'm trying to help others figure out how to work with their students and build those relationships and then to implement things. But like I help with Camp Abilities Texas in the summer some. And then we do expanded core events at the service center. So we always, try to help students and encourage them and encourage families to expect more out of their kids, because my big thing is I want them to be successful adults and to be able to be productive and in field jobs just like any other person is.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really tricky for us, the people who are coming in to the classroom and maybe pulling the student out, or even if we push into the class, we're not there for very long. And so when we are the ones who are like, no, 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 this student can do X, Y, Z. And it like blows other people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so tricky though. How do you overcome that? How do you get teachers to trust you when you aren't there for very long?
I would say that's probably one of the harder things that I've come across, especially as the person that comes in as the coach or that tries to help people implement. I think about those active learning kids that are like the medically fragile kids. And a lot of people don't think that those kids have very much potential. And, given the right circumstances and the right opportunities, they still can do more and like move, as far as like, if you're looking at the orientation mobility piece of it, if they're not moving, that's our job, is to help them develop that purposeful movement. And so just being able to say, hey, this is going to take a long time. It's not going to happen in a day. It's going to happen over time, and it's very short. So just trying to get them to buy in, and that's hard sometimes. I mean, that's just, or trying to help them with an academic student realize, hey, they really don't need a buddy to walk them around. They have a cane and they need to use it, because they're not always going to have that person next to them. And, we want them to be college bound. So you've got to let them be independent, even though it can be scary. And yeah, they may fall, but that means that they're going to get back up again, and that we just need to help them along the way.
For me, I'm pretty assertive. And I think maybe my teachers are intimidated by me. So they tend to do what I say. because I'm a very big advocate for him. And so I just go in with like, look, these are the expectations. This is where he's at. And we're not going to accept anything less than that. And so I don't typically have that many problems, but my particular caseload's unique because I work for a co-op, but I'm at one school the whole time, and I'm not itinerant at this moment. So that helps because then I have a relationship with the teachers too, and so they trust me, and if I tell them, they believe me. So I would say I don't really have that struggle at this point. Now, I do more so with the parents. I would say that's more of a struggle for me.
Well, I was going to ask you to give a piece of advice to our community who are struggling. So, can you give like people who might be struggling to build that relationship? I still would love to have a piece of advice from you, but I also want to hear more about the parent issue as well.
Okay, sure. I did have some where I was itinerant before, and so my advice would be helpful. If you are coming into a classroom and they look at you as an aid to them or someone that is partnering with them and has their best interest, then they tend to open up and they take your advice more, and they call and email you. And I still have teachers now from my previous location that will say, hey, you were so helpful on this and I really appreciate that. Can you help me with this? And so I just spent a lot of time. I would even come in and teach lessons in the classroom for the teacher because I had like 3 or 4 in the same classroom. And so I would come in and teach a lesson and give the teacher a break and model those skills I wanted to see done. But then it also gave them a chance to relax a little bit. And for one of my other teachers, I applied and secured a grant for them to help with some funding for some things that they needed. So I just really came alongside them and became a partner with them. So then when it was time for role release and stuff, it was a lot easier to do that because they looked at me as somebody who was trying to help them.
Girl, like such gold advice. Thank you. Okay, tell me more about the parents you were going to talk about.
Okay, so I struggle more with the parents and completely understandable in their situation. I would probably be the exact same way, but we are definitely baby our student, and we're enablers, and now we're getting better. And I think the key is building that relationship with them, and that's taken some time. And also, I think my student has started to take ownership because I expect more of him, and then they see that in him and they see how much joy that brings him, and so that's giving them more buy-in than anything I could say. It was just him having that confidence in himself. And so I mean, it's not so much preaching at him as much as it is like him demonstrating what that confidence has done for him.
Yeah, and everything that you guys have said, I keep hearing relationship, relationship, relationship. And Rebekka, you said the word we quite a bit. When I know it's not you, you said we baby him. No, you don't. But you're using the term we as putting yourself on the side of the parent and saying, we are doing this, and now we can get better and take a step forward. Or I always use the colloquialism to take a step forward into being better, right? You're not like, oh, I shake my fist at them and I tell them exactly what they're doing wrong. You said, no, we're doing this, and now we're going to be doing it a little bit differently. So it's all teamwork and it's all combined. And the fact that you pushed into the class and then you supported the teacher, like that, all of that has to help so much.
Yes, I think it does, for sure.
You guys are going to be talking at the symposium about PLAAFPs. And when you guys were first submitted this presentation application, I was like, cute idea, love it. Also, is it going to be an hour long? Because I could talk a long time on paperwork. And I'm sure you guys have seen it happen too, where you get paperwork transferred in and you're like, what is going on? Who devised this? I can't really understand what this learner's needs are. What was the impetus for you guys to really focus your
expertise area on this subject?
So I came in as a sped teacher, and so I had dealt with IEPs and PLAAFs and things before. And like there was a training that the district I worked in probably had that had some of the components probably 20 years ago. But Rebekka was a math teacher. And so when she came in and started writing IEPs, I think the struggle was real, but I'm going to let her tell you kind of why it was even more real for her than just the fact that she hadn't had the experience as a teacher before she was a TVI too.
So I can vividly remember I sit through all these IEP trainings, all of these PLAAFP trainings, all these gold trainings, and then I call Shannah afterwards and I'm like, I am more confused now than I was when I went in. This has nothing to do with visually impaired. This is great advice for general special education, but it's not specific to what we do. And what we do is very unique, and it's a bird of a different color. And it's like, I need more specific guidance on what we do. And if I feel this way, I know others have to feel this way. And so that's kind of how we got motivated to put this on, like for it to be specific to our area. That's often how our presentations get started.
Well, and it doesn't help. In Texas, there's two trainings that that the state pushes out, and it's standards-based IEPs and then IEP quality and rigor. So standards-based is for like kids that are typically in a classroom, in a general education classroom, and the quality IEPs are for those kids that are in like life skills or medically fragile classrooms. Well, as TVIs and comms, we have both kids. And so the rule is kind of changing in Texas. I think they want you to do standards-based first, but we don't just have academic goals for our kids. A lot of the time we have functional goals, especially as TVIs and comms. Once in a while we have academic goals if you've got a Braille kid, but I don't think unless you're in our field, you really understand the fact that our kids' functional goals also look different. And in Texas, especially, they should be based on the expanded core curriculum. So there wasn't anything specific designed for our TVIs and comms. And Rebekka and I try to present at Texas AER every year. And so she basically will come up with her problem for the year and say, hey, this is what we're going to present on so that we can make it easier for everyone. So basically, we just wanted to have something specific for TVIs and comms because it doesn't matter. You can do any kind of IEP training, and I don't think it's going to be geared for our people unless it's someone in our field that does it, because unless you're in our field, you're not going to understand it.
So can you guys explain why TVIs and comms have been having so much trouble with these in relation to the fact that they are that most of our goals are functional goals? What does that have to do with that?
So with standards-based IEPs, like I said, those are, if you do that training in Texas, we have online training and then in person, that is more academic focused. And so, with the functional goals, I think people are like, well, where do we get our goals from? And I think sometimes they forget that your goals can't be something you just pluck out of the air. They have to be evaluation based. And if you're doing your VI evaluation or your O&M evaluation, then that's where those goals have to come from. And you need, a basis and a baseline for where to start from. Rebekka, do you have any more input other than that on why it's harder?
I would say it's because we are covering everything. It's a full student situation, like from independent goals to rec and leisure goals and those are unique to our area. You don't have, a special ed teacher is typically not going to be covering a goal on finding what type of music you like. But, that can be a rec and leisure goal for one of our students. And so you don't write a goal like that that's not very common it's a very unique situation. And so there's not a lot of guidance for the specific areas of the ECC. Now, in special ed, there's a lot there's common functional goals like toiletring or, opening packages by yourself or things like that. But ours are just so much more specific than that, or like even things like understanding your eye condition or understanding how your eye works. These are goals that only people in our area would write. And so that makes it a little bit more unique. And there's not a lot of guidance out there for how specifically to do that so that it meets those standards that Texas puts out, because we fall underneath that. We have to follow the same rules and guidelines as everybody else, but with our particular struggles in mind. So being able to merge those two, I found to be troublesome when I was first in the field. Like, how do I get what I really need to cover also to meet the requirements of the state of Texas?
Yeah, and in this presentation, you're going to have 500 O&Ms all around the world. So how are you guys going to be teaching about this that doesn't just have to do with Texas? What are the overall national issues that you guys have found and international issues?
Well, I would say that specifically the goals don't change. These kids all need these skills. And because of their visual impairments, they're missing some of those basic concepts. And it doesn't matter if you're in Texas or Colorado or if you're in Germany, like those things are not specific to an area. It's the overall needs of the child are the same. They all have deficiencies due to their visual impairments in these particular areas, one or the other, And so it's about identifying what the student needs and then being able to address that need with whatever state requirements or national requirements that you have. But the need doesn't change. The need is the same.
And I think just making sure that you're like, this is where we are, but these are the gaps. And it doesn't matter where the kid, where you live, all those kids are still going to have those gaps. And then also realizing that maybe they have a laundry list of gaps. Well, you need to pick 2 or 3 to focus on. And then when you reach those 2 or 3, then we can talk about writing a new PLAAFP statement and talking about, okay, this is where we were and this is where we are. And this is why we need to start again and to start this process all over again. Just making sure that we don't have, that the kids don't fall between the cracks and that we are able to focus on specifics without having to make the student, the family, or us overwhelmed as comms as well.
Yeah, it can be tricky to fit all of it into such a short paragraph or 2 paragraphs. And so as we're talking, I just want to remind our community that when we're talking about a PLAAFP or PLAAFP, it's the present levels. That is what we're talking about. And in America, in the IEP, in the Individual Education Plan, we have to turn these in and talk about where the student is, what their present levels are, and basically summarize if they met their goals, plus a little bit more, plus also why do they need services and what is the reason that we're going to continue services or start services. And we have to put that in with the IEP. It's a separate document than the goals or progress reports. And so at the symposium, we're going to be chatting quite a bit about how to get this right and how to do it in a way that makes it so that you cover all of those concept gaps without it being like 8 pages long, without it being something that is so arduous to read. And so I'm so glad that you guys are taking this on and helping us, because the paperwork aspect of our job is often the trickiest. Neither of you guys, when I asked you about students or why you got into this, mentioned the paperwork. You both mentioned the students. And so I just wanted to say thank you for taking on what is pretty boring part of our job, but makes such a huge difference.
And I just feel like, too, that it's important for us to make sure that we're doing due diligence for everyone to understand really where and how to say where the student is. I think sometimes we we end up focusing on what they can't do instead of what they can. And that's where the PLAAFP is important. But then again, like picking out those very specific things that you're going to work on, because there's no way that I think that's the difference when we look at standards-based IEPs versus IEP quality and rigor. For standards-based, a lot of the time, I think you look at the places the student needs to go because maybe they don't have as many gaps. But if you're looking at a kid that's in a medically fragile classroom, there's no way you could look at every possible aspect of what they need. And I think we forget that too sometimes, is that we've got to take and do one thing at a time, or two or three things at a time that kind of work together, so then we can reach this common goal. And like I said, it may mean that we have to come back to an additional IEP meeting or do something else, but I would rather make small strides and have to come to more meetings than make 10 goals and only be able to accomplish 2 of them in the time frame because we picked too many things to focus on.
Another thing that we really focused on in our presentation that I think transfers easily across states or across internationally is that we really linked the different identification pieces to assessments, things that we were using to find out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, to kind of get an overall picture. So we've got a lot of referencing to some materials that will be helpful, I think, for anybody who's coming into our session to see where we get this information and how we got it.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for putting on this presentation at the symposium and for sharing a little bit about you as professionals. It's really cool to see behind the scenes of who these people are, what are their philosophies, and what do they really stand for before we even get into the symposium conference itself. I'm really excited to learn from you. We're going to go ahead and wrap up, and I want for each of you guys to give us a piece of advice to help our community take a step forward in being better TVIs or O&Ms. What is one piece of advice that you would give them?
So Rebekka and I both have a mentor that is the same, and that is, I feel like, is a good friend of ours. And she told me when I started, you're not going to know every answer to every question. It's okay not to know the answer and to say, hey, I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll tell you later. Because I'd rather not pretend that I know what I'm talking about than to just say, hey, yeah, I don't have the answer today, but I can get it for you. So then I'm learning and not trying to tell you the wrong thing too.
My piece of advice is eat the elephant one bite at a time. Each year, I would find something that was a major part of my caseload, and I would inundate myself with every training I could find for that one subject for that entire year. And then the next year, I'd pick a different topic, and I still do that. So for our profession, I think eat your elephant one bite at a time.
Guys, these are great pieces of advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you even having this conversation and coming on to this podcast. It's been absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to continue to get to learn from you.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Rebekka and Shannah really know what they're talking about with the paperwork aspect, but we didn't even really get into that. We stayed on topic of their students and what makes them such good teachers. And I absolutely loved having that conversation with them. If you are interested in joining the International Orientation and Mobility Online Symposium, or if you want to stay tuned for all of the other incredible things that we have coming down the pipe, just click the link below. We've got it all for you. And as always, like and subscribe so that way you can stay on top of the most innovative strategies coming down the pipe for you.